1 Samuel 31:3. Don't you recognize David, ex-servant of King Saul of Israel? He's been with me for a long time. I found nothing to be suspicious of him, nothing to complain about, from the day he defected from Saul until now. But what have I done, said David. Have you had a single cause for complaint from the day I joined up with you until now? Have you ever felt like your past positioned you for a negative outcome? Many times your negative may be a positive in disguise. A negative circumstance may be actually repositioning you for a positive outcome. The Philistine officers that David was talking with here did not trust him. He was guilty by association. His past identity had not destroyed his desired destiny. However, they could not trust him because of his past. Little did he know the future held different things for him. A visual negative, sometimes its purpose is to align you for an unseen positive. So what we see in the natural is not always what God sees down the road for us. There's something positive that is unseen to us. A negative circumstance does not mean God has left the scene, although sometimes you feel like it does. It feels like you're there completely by yourself. He's not on the scene anymore, and how can any good come from your situation or your circumstance? But the Bible tells us in Psalm 37:23, the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. When you seek Him, you can be assured that your steps are ordered, even if it feels like you're in the middle of a negative circumstance, everything around you collapsing. David was a mighty warrior. He was a fighter. He was one that was his career. That's what he did. And here it looked like he was no longer trusted. He was just going to return home, not to fulfill what he knew that he did well. However, little did he know, when he got back to the city of Ziklag, he would find that his family had been taken captive. What if returning home was meant to reposition him? What if he didn't return home? His family had already been taken captive. So would he have been able to recapture them and bring them back home? Would he have been able to even find them at this point? If he had went and fought as he planned on and intended upon doing. Sometimes we have to put a little more faith into it, a little more trust that maybe we are on the exact path that God wants us, even though we can't see how that could possibly be in His will. So how are you viewing your obstacles in your life? We've all got them. Think about what you're going through right now. Think about the negatives that appear to be overwhelming and overpowering to you. The things in your life that just don't make sense. How could God bring something good out of this? How could this change for the better? How could this have any kind of a positive impact on my life when it's so painful, when it's so difficult, when it doesn't feel right? There's often going to be that process through the pain on the way to prosperity in your purpose. Prosperity always awaits, but many times there's a painful process you have to go through to get there. It may mean laying down what you know how to do. It may mean surrendering what you're comfortable with, surrendering your own will to the will of God, even though it makes no sense to you whatsoever. You have to be patient with yourself. There's stages, and as I said, there's a process you have to go through. As a matter of fact, there's 5 different things that we learn from David in this passage of Scripture, and we're going to talk about these a little bit. Number 1, there has to be a weeping time. When things aren't going right, when things are not as you want them to be, when they make no sense, you're distraught. You feel helpless. It's that helpless feeling. You feel like you're in the middle of a void when nothing's changing in your life. You don't know what to do. So many times it brings you to tears. Why me? What's going on? I can't do anything about this. How do I get out of this situation? All these things happen. We see here from David, it says, David and his men burst out in loud wails, wept and wept until they were exhausted with weeping. And we see this in 1 Samuel 30, verse 4. They were so frustrated and so overwhelmed with grief when they returned and found that their family was gone. But probably they couldn't help but think, what if I didn't come home? What if I was out fighting? What if I was over there when my family was gone from here? What if I had not come home? But yet they still had to go through that process of weeping. What now? What am I going to do now in the middle of this circumstance because I feel helpless? I have no plan of action. I have no direction. The second thing we find with David, what they did, was there's a bitter time. Usually when the weariness and the weeping fade away, we get angry and we get frustrated and we do the whys, all the whys me. Why this happened? Why that happened? Why not them? We go through all those million whys. Why did this happen? And we claim they're responsible for it. And many times we put that blame other places because we don't know what to do with it. We just feel so overwhelmed with these whys that we get bitter instead of better. And this is exactly what happened in this situation. It said there was talk among the men, bitter over the loss of their families, of stoning David. Why do you think that happened? Why do you think they were bitter with David? Isn't it true that many times when things aren't going good and we lose something in life, we look for someone to blame for that? Instead of looking for a solution, we look for a place to lay the blame. Let me ask you a question. Does that solve anything? Does it change your situation? Does it change your circumstance? But it is a part of the process. It's a part as a natural human being that we go through. So I don't want you to beat yourself up here and say, oh, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. There is a process, yes, that we go through. It helps us to discover who we are. It helps us to grow. It helps us to mature and realize that, okay, this is where I am. Now how am I going to get from here to there? It's part of that process. Well, what happened next with David? There was a strengthening time, a time when he regained his trust in God. Now here in this passage, it tells us, it says, David strengthened himself with trust in God. This tells us that David probably had to come to a place where he had to regain trust in God. He had to say, all right, God, I trust you again. That tells us that maybe through all this, he was frustrated. He was bitter. Where are you, God? Why are you not here? How can I trust you? I entrusted my family to you. I entrusted these people to you. In our own lives, I entrusted this job. I entrusted these circumstances to you. How could you not be there? How could you not be back here taking care of this when I'm out here doing this? He had to regain his trust in God. He had to remember that God's still on the throne and God had a plan. He was repositioning him to fight a different battle. He was repositioning him for more prosperity, as you'll see in the end of this. The next thing that he did was number 4, is consultation time. There was a time of consulting. He was ready for direction, and this is what we call the planning period. We went through the weeping time, the bitter time, the strengthening and gaining back our trust in God time. All right, now it's time to consult God. What do I do? And this is exactly what David did. It said David prayed to God, and he strengthened himself first with his trust in God, and then he ordered Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, bring me the ephod so I can consult God. He knew that he was going to need some help. He didn't see a way out of this. Here he is, the mighty warrior, but he didn't know what to do. Have you ever felt like that in life? You know your job, you know what you're doing, you're very good at it, and all of a sudden, that just gets uprooted, and now here you are, and you don't know what to do. What do you need to do? Exactly what David did in this situation. He said, all right, God, you're going to have an answer. I'm going to have to consult you. I'm going to have your help with this one, because what I know to do is not what I can do in this situation. I need your help. So there's a time when we have to consult God. Ready for direction, it's the planning period. Let's make a plan. Let's make a plan of action. Let's move past that bitterness. Let's move forward into a different place in our life. The 5th thing that David did was prayer time. He asked God for the outcome. It said David prayed to God, shall I go after the raiders? Can I catch them? Notice here he asked 2 questions. Shall I go and can I catch them? What I love about God is he gave 3 answers. He didn't give 2 answers to his question. He gave 3 answers. And God is very faithful to do that for us. He not only answers our question, but he gives us insight beyond what we ask for. He tells him, and this is what he says. He said, the answer came, go after them. Yes, you'll catch them. And yes, you'll recover all. So he gave David assurance. He says, go. God has given you the weapon to win. So in your situation, in your circumstance, go. Get ready and go. Go through your process, but go. Get ready and move forward. You have the weapons to win the battle and move past where you're at currently. Number 2, you'll succeed. And that was God's second answer. You will succeed. Your goal will be reached. So we don't have to fear that when we go, we're not going to make it. We know we're going to make it because God says go. He says you'll succeed. So you will reach your goal. And the third thing he says is you'll prosper. Recovery is not optional. You will recover. You will stand again. You will move forward. You will progress in life. Recovery is not an option when you're seeking God and consulting Him. It's worth the fight to experience the favor. And there will be a fight. There will be a battle in yourself that will take place, that you will have to overcome many things. Perseverance will be required. In 1 Samuel 30:10, we see here, it says, they arrived at the brook Besor, where some of them dropped out. David and 400 men kept up the pursuit, but 200 of them were too fatigued to cross the brook Besor and stayed there. When they finally got to the brook to cross over, they were exhausted and they stayed behind. Many times we get right up to that place of crossover and we fall out. We don't cross over onto the place where we will win the battle. Perseverance is always required, but you can expect exhaustion. Rewards are given to the runners. Treasures are found by those who do the digging. But you gotta go. You gotta cross over. When the heat is turned up and your exhaustion is maxed, it's crossover time. And there's been times in my own life when I've experienced that. And I'm sure there's times in your life when you felt that as well. You can't take any more. There's too much on you. How's the good going to come out of this? There's a time to cross over so you can experience the victory that's on the other side. 1 Samuel 30:11 says to us here, some who went on came across an Egyptian in the field. Favor falls in your path when you set out towards your purpose. Opportunities begin to open. And that's exactly what happened for David and his men. There was an Egyptian who had fell behind. He was one who had taken his family. They were able to find them because of the one who fell behind. So favor will find you. It will fall on your path when you cross over your circumstances and set forth to move forward and do the persevering. Look for your opportunities. 1 Samuel 30:17-20. We move on and it says, David pounced. He fought them before sunrise until evening of the next day. It's not always an overnight battle. Don't we wish it would be? Sometimes you say, but I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been doing this for 10 years. If you've crossed over, your victory's still ahead. You've got to keep going until you taste that victory because God's given us that promise. Remember the start as you approach the finish. Remember where you came from and how far you've come. No defeat awaits the destined who stay on the battlefield. You have 3 positions. Failure. It's an attempt resulting in giving up. Options. They're attempts resulting in another try. And then there's success. Reward of those who work their options but never fail. Yes, you can start over. Yes, you can recover all. And yes, you can live in victory.